Greetings. You know, there was a study done in 2018 that found 393 million civilians owned firearms in the United States of America. Now, that's enough for every man, woman, and child to each own one and still have 67 million guns left over. As an American living in Germany, I often have received questions about the gun culture in America and, for example, what it was like growing up in it. I also noticed that quite a few viewers of mine here have left me comments in the past on videos saying they were curious. They wanted me to talk about guns. So first I did a little research to see what YouTube would allow, because I was afraid I might get in trouble or they might not want me to make a video on this topic. And then I started looking at statistics. But you know what I realized after feeling really sick looking at a lot of the statistics? I feel like we all know this. And I mean, we all have access to the internet. You can look up statistics. I find a good webpage for some numbers onto what's going on with gun violence in America would be the Gun Violence Archive. This is an independent nonprofit organization that collects data from different sources. And there you can see what's going on in America with guns and people dying, laid out in a pretty clear and simple form. Spoiler alert, it's horrific. So today I decided I'm just going to talk about my own life experiences in regards to growing up in America with the so-called gun culture, and just get a little bit into what it was like, and also how like maybe some of my views and perspectives changed through time, and especially, for example, like once I moved to Germany. Maybe I can give some of you a little bit of a different perspective, a different view on what that gun culture is all about or means to the different people in America. I feel like sometimes when I speak to Europeans in general, sometimes they forget just how big America is and how vast and different the people and the cultures and the areas can be. It is not my goal to take a side on this topic or to even try to influence any of you to leaning one way or the other in regards to guns. But I have noticed in my almost 20 years of living in Germany and traveling like around Europe, when I get into deep discussions about this topic, the topic of guns in America, I find sometimes when I just share things that were like normal for me, I end up with some very shocked looks from some of these Europeans I talk to. And sometimes I've told them about like ways of life and cultures and types of peoples and their opinions that they didn't know about, they never heard of. And I find in life in general, it's good to hear different perspectives, different views on situations. And so that's my only goal here, is to just share my personal opinion and perspectives that I have on this topic based on how my life went. So I grew up with guns. Not only did I live in a hunting area where people, for example, hunted regularly things like deer, but my dad, like, I think it's safe to say he had what we could call an arsenal. Like, he had enough guns to fill this room. For me, from a young age, guns were normal things that people owned for a variety of reasons, like hunting, pleasure, self-defense, collecting. I personally, at home from my father, was taught to fear and respect weapons. I think from a young age I understood that they could be dangerous, but I also understood that they could be fun, for example, like target shooting. But I feel like I was taught to always, yeah, the fear and respect thing. Use them in a safe manner. These are essentially not really toys, even though you may have fun shooting at tin cans and such. Rather than a toy, it's more of a tool that needs to be used properly. And sometimes here in Germany, sometimes when I just say that little bit to some of my German friends, I'll already get a look of shock or even like a smirk. We grew up in two different cultures. What's normal in one is completely crazy and dangerous to another. Or what's normal and dangerous in one is completely crazy and dangerous to another. Whatever, tomato, tomato. You see, my dad grew up on a farm where they raised and killed animals. He had hunted. He was also in the past a security guy, a U.S. Marine, an ex-cop, and well, what's the obvious accessory to all of those pursuits? Guns, of course. And I would have to say, to be completely fair, while it was very important to my dad to teach me how to respect guns and use them safely, I think it's also safe for me to say that he definitely had a little bit of an addiction, maybe a fetish, to collecting these objects. Like in the same way that some people would collect and show off comic books or trading cards. This type of personality is very common in America. Side note, my father was a news addict, and I remember anytime we sat down at the dinner table, he would always have the evening news on. And in my region, we would get my area going all the way down to Philadelphia. And just looking back as a kid, I mean, my memories might not be so clear at my age now, but I mean, I just have this memory that every night I heard about something, whether it was just gunshots went off, or somebody died, or a cop killed somebody, or gangs were shooting. It was every night on the news, every night. So that awareness was always in the background. And I think it was around fifth grade when I really wanted my own BB gun, and I found this specific one that was being marketed to girls. I had already shot, I believe at that point, a rifle and various other BB guns, and I just I wanted my own. We lived across the street from a canal, and we could line up cans there to shoot, or put targets on the trees, or even shoot at leaves floating down the canal. It was fun. I was pretty good at hitting a target. I wanted to practice more. Just like any kid that wants anything, you approach your parents, and I of course approached dad because this was his thing. I knew he would understand my passion, and he told me that if the next semester or whatever at school, if my report card came back and I got all B's, that's a 2 here in Germany. If I got all B's, I could in fact get the BB gun that I wanted. Another side note, my dad was a bit of a softie and slightly a pushover for his daughter. So I'm pretty sure I got straight C's, that's about a 3 in Germany, and like maybe 1 B. But I got my BB gun. I got my Daisy. And, she doesn't fire like she used to, and I don't even have the little BBs. She might be a little crooked off in her scope there, but I don't know. It's just a thing I really wanted in like fifth grade, and I got it, and I still love her. As I got older, growing up in America, I got a little bit of a different view on guns. Like, by the time I was in high school, I knew people that were carrying guns on a regular basis, either because they felt they needed it to defend themselves because of where they lived, or maybe it was due to their professions they were doing at the time. Possibly not legally, possibly a little dangerous. And I think some just thought the guns made them look tough. And sure, you do have ones that are immature and boast and show them off and maybe treat it more like a toy than a killing machine. Oh, and this is another thing that when I tell the Germans, they usually look at me like, what? I think it was like when I was in high school, it was like maybe once a month or every other month, they would randomly lock us in our classrooms while the police would come in with dogs and go through the hallways, walking along where the lockers were, essentially looking for guns, drugs, and knives. And I'm pretty sure almost every time they found stuff. And when I think about it, I believe by the time I was in high school, I had known at least 2 people that had died by gun. I knew several that had dumb injuries related to stupidity. I think my own brother got shot in the butt with a BB gun once. In the butt, because they were playing war in the forest. And of course, when you play war, you use guns with like real metal BBs. America. And of course, every night, the news, every night, they're reporting on gun deaths or gun accidents or gun drive-bys or cop-related killings or gang-related killings or home invasions and shootings and self-defense. I mean, it's just often, it's just the norm where I'm from to hear about this stuff on the constant. And damn straight living here in Germany, I notice this. I'm still a news addict like my father was. I'm constantly reading the news and try to stay up on what's going on in the world. But um, what I hear in the news here in the region that I live in, yeah, there's crime, there's bad things that happen. But I just don't feel I hear so much like I did back where I'm from. You know what I'm saying? And when I got older and moved away from my parents, my relationship to guns actually at one point got pretty damn serious. The following story is not really easy for me to tell. It's very personal and I didn't share it with everybody in my life. But I feel like it's sort of important to share in this story. I think it is another perspective that maybe a lot of people, for example, here in Germany or in Europe in general, don't think about or don't hear. But it's a bad story, and if you're triggered by, threats of domestic violence and things like that, you may want to go away now. So I was in my young 20s, single mom, living in a simple trailer in a small town, you could say kind of located in the middle of nowhere. That little town had no local police. When you needed a police officer, you had to call for the state police. And pretty much you were lucky if they would get there in under an hour. And I was receiving legitimate death threats. I even had an actual cassette tape of this person clearly threatening to kill me. And I filed a police report. Not much came from that as they couldn't find him. Long story short, I went to a lawyer. Every time I tell this following story, the look of shock on Germans' faces when I tell it always amazes me. Again, not a great memory for me either. So I told the lawyer about my situation, and he was well aware of the long response time for cops getting to the area that I lived in. Um, and his response to me was something like this: Ms. Armstrong, you can't afford me, but I believe you and wish to give you some advice for your own safety. He says to me, do you have a gun? I respond to him, yeah, I have a handgun. I got it from my brother. This is when he gets intense and very clear with his words, and he says, good. If this guy shows up on your property and you feel like your life is being threatened, you feel in danger of your life and the need to defend yourself, first, lock your door and scream loudly for him to leave, loud enough that hopefully neighbors hear it. And then he said, and call the police. Get them on their way there. And then he said, get your gun, but this is very important. Pay attention, Miss Armstrong. He says, if this guy comes in your yard, do not shoot him when he is in your yard. Keep your door locked, stay inside, wait for the police. And then he says to me, however, if this guy tries to enter your trailer, have your gun ready, but do your best to hit him here or lower. Do your best to not get a headshot, because this in a court of law could make you look more like an aggressor and less of an act of self-defense. I was shocked. I mean, the whole situation was shitty enough as it is, but I guess I was thankful for the free American legal advice. The good news is that guy didn't get me. And I believe it was only a few years after that that I actually fell in love with a German and moved to Germany. And when I moved to Germany, I brought a 7-year-old child with me. And boy, am I glad I did, because with every school shooting that happened in America since I moved here in 2001. Again, you can look it up. There's been quite a few school shootings since I moved from there to here. And with every single one of them that I saw on the news while I'm living in this little Bavarian village, I felt really reassured that I made the right decision in bringing him here. It's rare that it happens here in Germany. Don't get me wrong, there is crime here. Crime happens here. If bad people want to find guns, they can find guns. But it is such a difference than what I grew up in. Like, it's rare that it happens here. In my time living in Europe and traveling around it, I explored a lot of major cities, and I explored a lot of them on my own, and sometimes alcohol was involved, as well as weird hours of the night in odd little corners of these cities. And it feels so different than when I would go to major cities in America. It feels so different to me. It feels definitely safer. But I mean, what did I know about major cities in America? I told you I came from a small town. But while I came from a small town, I had easy access to some cities. My cities were Philly or New York. I could be in Philly in 45 minutes, and I could have been in New York with my car, and I think it was under an hour. And I would often hit those cities with friends just for a day out or for shopping or to go to a concert. What did I know? Well, I mean, what I knew was when you grow up in America, like in busy major cities, for example, but I think pretty much anywhere, you gotta watch yourself. You gotta watch your stuff. You gotta watch where you go. You know people carry a gun. How fights and arguments can quickly escalate, and yeah, there could be a gun involved. Like that possibility is very real. I mean, accidents with guns happen. You know that drive-bys happen because gangs exist. And you know that sometimes cops kill innocent people. It happens. And there's a lot of people also in America with mental issues that they do not get any treatment for because they can't get treatment for it because they can't afford it in that profit for healthcare system that kills the poor. Again, I repeat, it's just common knowledge. Weapons are easy to get. They're out there. They're everywhere. I feel like when I was in American cities, I mean, I visited more than Philly and New York. I did travel a little bit in America, but I feel like all of that stuff, that knowledge that you gather growing up and watching the news, or even just from having friends involved in those things, they sit in your brain. Those things are always kind of, even if passively in your subconscious, they're in there, and you have that knowledge. I never had that kind of worrying madness about so many different scary things going through my brain, really, in my time in major cities here. Again, I know there's going to be a few of you leaving me a comment. We have gun problems, we have crime. Yes, I know you do. Again, this is just my perspective, and to me, I see a huge difference. And I think what I'm saying is, I'm thankful. Thank you, Germany. No place is perfect, but I am so happy that both I and my child ended up somewhere where I feel we are safer than where we're from. And so here's the thing. I am very thankful for the life that I have now living in Germany. I feel like I clearly see how strict gun laws protect the masses. Can I explain this to all of my American friends and family? No. Are all of them wrong in their opinions of wanting to keep guns, the ones that do? In my humble opinion, no. Not all of them. And even after I sometimes share these stories and stories like this that I have from my life, I find that, let's say, Germans or Europeans that I'm speaking to, specifically non-Americans, I find that they're often shocked when I tell them that, let's say, hypothetically speaking, tomorrow I had to move back to America. Like, I have no choice, I have to do it. Let's hope that doesn't ever happen. But hypothetically speaking, if I had to move back to that land tomorrow, the first thing I'm going to buy when I get there is a handgun. And you might be thinking, why, Armstrong? You just pointed out that you feel safer and it's better here where the guns are controlled. Because it's so out of control there. It is such a vicious circle. I don't know how they'll ever stop it. First off and foremost, guns are everywhere. When I say everywhere, like I think of how my dad was a big fan of like small town gun shows not a lot of people knew about, or even ads in quirky little local newspapers. He came home with some things that were very questionable if they were legal or not sometimes. And don't even get me started on the grenade I found in his kitchen I was cleaning out after he died. My dad liked weapons. But yeah, damn straight. If I tomorrow had to move back there, the first thing I'm going to get is a handgun for my own self-defense because there's a lot of crazy people there that have guns. But who are those people? Who are those people? This is another thing I have in my conversations with European friends. Um, I feel like a lot of times in conversations because of news or whatever, things get very generalized, like Americans love their guns. And I feel like even if we picked out just the Americans who love their guns or believe they should always have the right to possess a gun, if we pulled all of them out and made a group, even in that group, you're going to find a bunch of different groups of personality types. One personality type that I think of right off the top of my head that I think maybe a lot of Europeans may not be aware of are the ones that truly believe they have the right to keep the guns to defend themselves against a corrupt government. Now, you'll hear a lot about this connected with militias and right wing groups, but I would dare say they ain't all right wing. Not all of the people that stockpile and prepare. They're just people that do not trust the government. Different ones at different levels, and sure, some of them go the route of conspiracy theories, but I mean, just in general, does anybody really trust the American government anymore? Like I'm saying, you may not agree with them, but I think if you think about it, you can kind of understand how that happens. Like, I personally knew people that were not right wing, not members of any militia group up in the mountains, but they had a room in the basement where they stockpiled things like water and canned goods and weapons just in case the time came. So another personality type is you have people that view this as a sport. Shooting is a sport, and I do think some Germans get that because I've met some Germans here that are the members of shooting clubs, and they're very passionate about it. I had great conversations with some German gentlemen I've met here, and what guns they've had the chance to shoot and. Yeah, so in America, you have personality types that look at it as a sport. The same way maybe some Germans love foosball. Just our sport can kill you. But there definitely are ones that aren't killing anybody. They're just going to shooting ranges or have shooting ranges at their own home and they have the fun of trying to hit targets. Even competing in competitions for that kind of stuff and winning awards and having the pride of that, being good at that sport. I think another personality type, let's call it, that maybe like when I speak to Germans and my European friends about this topic that they don't think about is again with how massive and big America is. Don't forget, we have little towns really out in the middle of nowhere, worse than like where I grow up as far as far away from police and they don't respond. You're on your own to defend yourself in those areas. But not just that, we also have dangerous, let's call them ghettos, hoods, where the cops just don't come. And I repeat, they're dangerous areas. So I myself can kind of understand how somebody keeps a weapon on them to defend themselves when everybody else is walking around their neighborhood with a weapon on them. And some of those people are crazy, and the cops don't give a. I mean, if you call the cops, there's a good chance they're going to kill you anyway. You see where the mentality goes? It's madness. And yeah, you do have people in small towns that they believe they need to have that gun to defend themselves if somebody would try to break into their house. Again, America, the guy breaking in the house probably has a gun. So if you don't, I mean, yeah, like self-defense is a real thing. Whether it's the cops not responding because they're, racist or not funded or not sent to those areas, or because you live out in the middle of nowhere. And let's not forget, you also have people, again, with how big America is. You have people living out in the woods. You have people where there are bears and stuff. Bears, wolves, coyotes. Those people, too, believe they have a pretty valid reason to hold on to their weapons just in case a wild animal tries to kill them. But I think me personally, the one personality type you will find in American gun culture that drives me crazy are the ones that sort of like, I want to say they fetishize it. Like, it's a fetish. These are the ones that like get really passionate about you better not take their guns out of my cold dead hands. And they've got ridiculous amounts of them. I don't think they'll ever admit it, but I'm telling you, it feels like a weird fetish. I feel like there's a lot of them, primarily male, but I have seen female as well in America, where like this object, they will act like a screaming toddler if you take their beloved toy away from them. They'll yell things like freedom and quote the Second Amendment, but quite honestly, this is just an extension of something that's quite often, I think, lacking down there. Or maybe in here. But it feels like a lot of them, like, it really, to me, just my personal opinion, that personality type bugs me the most because they're like, they really, in my opinion, just seem like crybabies, like little toddlers that are, rather than looking at what's realistically going on in the world in relation to people dying from their toy, their selfish toddler brain just is screaming, "Don't take my toy!" I mean, so I wish America would get its act together in regards to gun control, make some effort because I don't really feel like much effort at all is made. But I mean, with the NRA lining the pockets of all the politicians, what can you expect? Money runs things in capitalism, not children dying in school and other people at mass shootings. And as I tried to make clear here in my very awkward way, I just don't know if it would ever be realistically possible to make it in big America. For example, what it's like here in little Germany. In the way of, I mean, here you can join a club, it's regulated, you get tested, you get taught about it, things are locked up and kept in safe places, and not a lot of people have it. But I just think with all the variety of factors in America as to why the different people within that gun culture will justify why they need one, it's just out of control. I mean, where do you begin? There are so many guns. So many people have them. I just don't know if it would ever be possible in America to have real gun control like you see in Canada or European lands. Like Switzerland, I also found interesting. The process one has to go to. They got guns there, they got gun clubs, they like to target shoot, but it is well regulated. I just feel like if they try that stuff in America, you're going to have people, well, I mean, they're going to protest against it, but you're going to have people hoarding and stockpiling guns more than they already are. But mostly I feel like America won't ever get real gun control because the politicians there, in my opinion, clearly work for big companies like the NRA, and they seem to matter more than the average man on the street. It's just all such a big mess, and every time I talk about this topic, guns or the gun culture in America, I'll tell you, it's one of many times where, again, I scream, thank God I am here. And I got no answers or solutions for what should or could or will happen in America. That is, like I said, just such a big mess and so out of control. I don't know where anybody's going to begin with it. I mean, they could begin with a few laws, but you would have thought they would have done that, what, like 12 school shootings ago? Oh, I'm so glad I'm here. But I did always find it interesting when I would have these conversations here in Europe, how often I had Europeans look at me and go, "Really?" And some things out of, my own personal stories that I told them, they had no clue about. They didn't know, or it just really surprised them, hit them in the face to hear somebody personally tell them, yeah, this is what goes on over there. And I think that's a healthy thing for society. We should know what goes on in other lands and other cultures to better understand them. America is a big, tricky country with a lot of different people and cultures all mixed together going on. I can see how not everybody over here is well aware of all of the different dynamics and opinions about guns in America. So I just wanted to share mine to try to create a little understanding. I'm curious if you're not from America and you're watching this, and let's just say tomorrow something magical happened and you got put in a position of fixing that country, what would you do to try to tackle this problem with gun culture in America? Where would you begin? Let me know in a comment, because I don't have the answers. I think really sad is, I mean, I was aware that there were problems when I lived in America and was aware of people dying and statistics and crime reports, but I think it like hits you in a different way when you're watching it from afar. Like I'm living in Europe and I'm watching it from afar, and at the same time the reality that I'm living in is like opposite land. And like my early life, for example, in America, I was just living in it. This was my normal. This was all normal. And then, like, I come over here and I start talking to Germans about some of these stories, and I realize to some Germans, my stories and things I witnessed and saw and went through are so not normal. This is why communication is everything, and we all need to talk to each other and learn more about each other. Maybe one day, with sharing all this information, we can fix the world. Yeah, so that's going to be my video today about growing up in gun culture. My little thoughts and opinions on it as an American that moved then to Germany. I appreciate each and every one of you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please click like, and if you want to see more, click subscribe. If you ring the bell, you'll get notifications when I upload. I'm trying to do them every week now. And until I come at you with my next video, I want you to just make sure that you take care of yourself.